Hello and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show, the only podcast in real estate investing that teaches what you need to know to find and flip deals right now. Wow. Break free the chains that are holding you back and join us on this episode with Jason Lucchesi.
Hey, what's up? It's Jason Lucchesi and welcome to the No Flipping Excuses Show. I am so excited that you are here with me today. Our expert that is joining us is somebody that I've known for quite a long time, and it's an interesting story how we met. You guys know that I am huge with LinkedIn and being able to connect with professionals on LinkedIn. Well, this guy has an amazing software that we're going to talk about today and some of the things that you really need to know about. But I was so intrigued and I wanted to know exactly what he was doing with his software to get to asset managers, people at hedge funds, that I reached out to him. I literally got my stalker hat on, found him on Twitter, found him on LinkedIn, I found him on Facebook, and we were able to connect. And this was back in 2012. Yeah, 2012. And I was able to meet up with him and we were able to talk, and he filled me in on some of the amazing things that he's doing. So I wanted to get him on the show. So without further ado, Mr. Brecht Palombo, how are you doing today, my man?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me today. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is, we've known each other now for quite a while. And I remember having you come on when I first launched our training program, Asset Manager Millions, and you were coming on and you were talking about the bank stuff and what to look out for with assets and all that kind of stuff. It was a really good time having you on back then. And now we're talking now again, and it's just cool being able to keep in touch. And I see all the amazing things that you're doing, and I see that, you know, you're a guest on other people's shows, and it's really cool seeing your journey along the way. So for folks that don't know who you are, Brecht, could you share just like a little bit about yourself, man?
Yeah, and thanks for that introduction. I appreciate it. And you know, we're talking now in like such a completely different market than 7 years ago when we first talked. I'm sure we'll get into that in a minute. I started off in software sales, tech sales back in the 90s. I know I don't look it, but I've been at it for a while. What happened was at the end of the .com bust there, is this show rated explicit? Do I keep the clean words? What's our status with that?
You could say some things.
We'll just say when I ate crap. Okay. When I ate it in the .com bust, they said, all right, well, you know, kind of what went wrong there? Why was this such a huge failure? What am I going to do so that doesn't happen again? I thought, well, you know, I know I can sell. I know I can, you know, I can make that happen. I can just hustle and make things happen. What do I get out there so that I'm not at somebody's mercy of whether or not they have a decent product and all that? And the answer for me was real estate.
Yep.
Because there's virtually unlimited inventory out there. You know, it's all different. The sellers are all different. And so you're never going to run out of opportunity with real estate. It just goes, it doesn't matter if the market's good or the market's bad. Somebody's selling, somebody's buying. And if you can get yourself in those transactions, you're going to keep making money. And so that was 2000, in the year 2000. And then, of course, real estate always goes up, right? And so, until it doesn't. And so I rode that into had some really good years, and we started kind of turning and flipping a lot of properties in the Boston area. So we'd go, and I had a partner, and we sort of worked like a kind of a wholesale angle. So we'd buy or we'd find multifamilies and warehouses and that kind of thing. We had a group of developers who we work with. They would buy them cash, and then they would convert them to condos. And so we got all sides of everything and kind of did a lot of work like that.
Yep.
And then got real late in the game there, and we had some deals that felt just real strange. You know, we had a couple of deals where people are coming in with no money down, and they've got they're pre-approved for $1 million, $1.2 million purchases, no money down, like flipping type money. I said, all right, this feels a little bit frothy. Like, what happens if this goes, you know, sideways? And I said, well, it's going to go to the banks. That's where this is going to go. It's going to end up with the banks. You're going to have to foreclose on this. They're going to, that's who comes out at the end of this. And it turned out that was right. So I was a little bit early. That was late 2006 when I started getting ready for that. And the way I got ready for that was like, all right, well, if I want to work for whoever is surviving, whatever happens, then that's the banks. What am I going to do there?
Right.
And I decided to become an auctioneer. So I got a real estate auctioneer's license, and I started calling on lenders. Now at the time, there were a lot more of them. There were like over 9,000 lenders, banks in the U.S. And a similar number of credit unions. Today, we're down to just over 6,000 or just under 6,000. So it's been pretty big consolidation. But even then, just in Massachusetts, I had this batch of 380 banks just in my local area. So well,
it's a decent amount.
Yeah, it's a decent amount. But which ones do you call? Who do you call? What do they have? How do you know? What do you say? There was no playbook for that at all. So I slogged through that for a little bit, and then I ended up finding a great mentor, and really learned a lot. And long story short, we're a couple $100 million in transactions for banks, many hundreds of transactions. I've sold everything from raw vacant land to portfolios of gas stations to individual REOs, everything for lenders. And kind of what happened on the back of that was I said, well, I can't be the only one who wants to do these kinds of deals, because what's great about it is when you're working with a lender like that, it's selling distressed assets for them. It's a regular repeat part of their business. Like they make loans go bad. They have to foreclose on the loans.
Right.
They're selling assets. Like this goes with the market's up, the market's down, doesn't matter. This is an ongoing full-time process for banks. And what I found out was that there's sort of a sweet spot in there. And for me and for you, if you're just, getting started in this, unless you're a big hedge fund or something, it's your local community and regional banks, because they're always writing debt. They're accessible. These are people who, they live and work in your community. They're not scary folks. They get paid a regular salary. They go to a job from 8:30 to 4 or 3:30, whenever bankers are working these days. Right. They're packing a bologna sandwich there in their briefcase. They're trying to get out early for the kids, soccer game. And in between all that, they're selling distressed assets all the time, every day. If you think about the market, is there any other? Now, I've done pre-foreclosure sales. I've done like mailing people for notices of default and all that. I've done a lot of different distressed asset type sales. Right. Whoever sells more than once in a distressed situation,
it's going to be the banks.
Just pretty much the banks. Like there isn't another market that I know of where they're going to they're even with a one buyer, they're going to sell in a distressed manner, discounted again and again. It doesn't make any sense. Once somebody's in that kind of trouble, that's kind of a one-shot deal. So that's one of the things that I really like about working with the banks is that once you get in there and you start making friends, you'll do deals again and again and again, and it just makes for a really sustainable business. So I don't know, is that enough background, or did I get you far?
No, that was great, and I'm glad you went that distance, because it definitely paints the overview on why I wanted to reach out to you, because I saw the importance of it when I was coming out with my training program, reaching out to people directly at the banks. Now, if you can, why don't we touch on this, because let's kind of explain to people that might be, they don't know this, but the local banks, we're not talking about, the top 25 banks, because you're pretty much going to go nowhere with them unless you do like what Brett said. You've got a hedge fund, you've got, a proof of funds letter with, 9 figures on it. We're not talking about those banks. We're talking about, banks at the local and sometimes regional level, right, Brett?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you are, if you're calling on Wells Fargo or B of A and those guys, it's just, there's nowhere to go with that. They have big special servicing companies. They have layers and layers of management. They have a lot of bureaucracy. Everything goes through a broker. The people who manage it have their assets it's very formulaic. If it's on for this amount of time and then reduce it by this much, except, this, and like, there's no ball to play there. They can't play with you. So,
right.
When you're talking about your local and regional banks, a lot of banks have 1, 2, 5 offices, like they're pretty small, and they still have millions, tens of millions, or even billions of dollars in assets in there.
Right.
Who you work with and the kinds of deals they have and all that, it's going to vary from place to place. And like I said, there's thousands of banks today, and so you can't just pick up the phone and call them all. The first thing to do, I like to say, is that there's a 3-step process. And the first thing to do is identify, okay, which banks am I going to call on? And the way you're going to determine that is, it's good to take a look at. So let me back up just a little bit. Deals are done, like you said, between people, right? So if you're going to be calling on bank, you can call the main line, but in the end, you're going to have to talk to a real person who's in there, who's in charge of this. And so that means that you're going to send some emails, you're going to reach out to them on LinkedIn, you're probably going to make some calls, and that takes a little bit of time. So, what we just said right there, that's some prospecting time.
Yep.
So if we're going to invest that kind of prospecting time, let's make sure that we're doing it with our best qualified prospects, with our most likely sellers, so that when we do get to talk to somebody in there, we know that we got a good chance at doing some business. And so there are, I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but the way this works is that banks and credit unions file these public reports through the FDIC, what's called the FFIEC, and then what's called the NCUA, which is the National Credit Union Administration.
Okay.
And in the reports, they'll lay out what they have for amounts of REO and non-performing notes. And I don't know, do you want to touch on notes at all in this call today?
Yeah, there's some folks that, are probably doing some note investing, and, we would love to touch on that.
Okay. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense because when you think about a lender, right, that when they have REO, that is, we should back up and say REO means, it's an acronym for real estate owned, which is shortened from other real estate owned,
right,
which is just a line item in the bank reports for properties that have been acquired through foreclosure, the process of foreclosure. Now, anybody who has a home or has a mortgage, that the bank has an interest in your property already, but they don't have the right of use, right? So they have, the interest that they have is that they've got debt that is on the property, which you're paying, which is secured by the collateral, which is the asset, which is your home, right?
Sure.
The property. And so the banks make these loans, and then that's their asset right now, is the paper. It doesn't have anything to do with the property. It has to do, except that the property is the collateral, it has to do with a piece of paper that says that it's a legal debt that is secured by this property that a certain person has to pay back under certain terms and conditions. Well, that paper is tradable. That paper, like anything else, can be bought and can be sold. It can be discounted. It can be, it's an asset in and of itself. It doesn't give them rights to come over to your house or whatever, but it gives them, depending on what kind of property it is and all that, it does give them certain rights. And one of those rights is the right to collect. And so if you think about, if you're going to work upstream, right? A lot of folks they're out there and they're trolling through MLS, or they're looking on REO websites. And that's one way to do it. It's a lot further down the stream. That means that this paper has gone bad. The loan isn't being paid anymore. They've engaged an attorney. They've brought it through a foreclosure process. Then they have to bring it to market. They, oftentimes put it with a realtor and all that. Well, upstream of that is for you to own the paper.
Yep.
Which is a whole other strategy. And so if you think about that for a minute, a lot of times, like, what's the average loan to value on a property? Right, 80-20.
Yeah, I would say 7. Yeah, I'd probably say 80%.
Yeah, something like that for the origination. A lot of times, though, when we're talking about these non-performing loans further down the road, these are things where the loan is significantly paid down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you might find is, and I'm just throwing out numbers here, this isn't an actual case study, but if you've got $100,000 home and you've got a $50,000 note, right? This is a $50,000, left on your mortgage. Then that bank you're sitting in a really, really good place, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you're deep in the stack. And so I think as we get into, can we talk about the market at all?
Yeah,
And the fact that
I was actually going to ask you about the market and what you thought about the market. So we've had some other experts on, and I would love to get your take on it too, because your software, obviously has a ton of data that it supports with what's going on. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything.
Yeah. So we're big on data, and we pay a lot of attention to it. We collect a lot of it and process a lot of it. Right now, this quarter, we're seeing a big uptick in defaults on consumer credit. So consumer credit cards and auto loans. And that is typically precedes defaults on residential. What are you going to let go first? Probably your car and your credit cards before you let your home go, right? And so we're starting to see that now. If all the news, North Carolina, New York, Seattle, California, Las Vegas, inventory's way up, prices are flat or declining, price cuts are up. And so does that mean that everybody should get out of real estate? No. It means that it's like that we're heading into a period where folks who really got in at the peak of it are going to be suffering a little bit. And whenever there's a little bit of suffering, there's opportunity. And I don't want to be too dark or too much of an opportunity. That is the way the market works, right? And so where I think a lot of that opportunity is going to be, again, is with our lenders like that. And so if you are able to if you're able to think outside the box a little bit, as we head into whatever we're heading into over the next few months, certainly it's going to be flat. Is it going to be dynamic crash like 2008? Probably not. But probably we're not going up and to the right every month, from here on out. We're gonna see a bit of a correction, which means that it's more important than ever that you get that you buy right, that you buy, that you pay less. And one of the ways to do that is by getting ahead of it by buying the paper.
Yep.
A lot of people are intimidated by that because it's not something like, mom and pop didn't own debt. You know what I mean? They didn't own the Joneses mortgages or whatever. Not then. They do now. A lot of folks do now. It's becoming much more popular. But it's a document. It's a promissory note. It says that you have a right to collect, and the way that you'll collect on that is either you're going to get paid or else you're going to liquidate the collateral. Right. And so you can buy papers that say this, that give you the right to go and exercise whatever the remedies are in there, often, foreclosure. And so some people buy notes in order to rehabilitate them. And they'll do things like loan modifications for the borrower. They'll reduce the principal, they'll extend it, they'll change the interest rates, and they want to keep the cash flow going. And that's a really nice way to have cash flow from real estate without the tenants and toilets and trash and all that, as my friend Scott Carson likes to say. The other set of folks who I know who buy paper, they're more in the loan to own business, and so they'll buy notes where the thing is past due with the knowledge that they have the power to foreclose, and they're going to go ahead and follow through with it. Now, this is like kind of a way outside example, and I'm not saying that that we'll just say results not typical, but I had a client who bought a note. Now this is a commercial property, so it's a little bit different, but buys the note for on a convenience store and gas station for $900,000.
Yep.
Okay. It was a very small bank with only 2 branches that sold the thing to him. They had already begun the foreclosure proceedings. They hired me. We came in, marketed that thing, and he owned the paper for fewer than 40 days before we sold it for $1.2 million.
Oh,
so about from 900,000 so we were profit of like somewhere around 330,000 at the end of the day.
That's awesome.
For under 2 months of work, never took possession of the property, only owned the paper, and just used the power of the foreclosure within the paper just to go and continue what had already been initiated by the bank. Now, you say, well, why would the bank do that? Why would they sell paper at a discount and then leave this, money on the table? And the answer is that it's the unknown. They didn't want to get into the unknown. They knew that if they sold this to him that day for that amount, they're done with that. They've recovered some of their capital. They can go on about their business. What they didn't want to do is they didn't want to end up going to foreclosure and owning a gas station and a convenience store, right? I mean, they're not in the business of that. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can get in there. But I find that what puts people off the most is they're intimidated by the fact that it's a bank, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's the wrong approach.
No, and the banks are, that's how you could get off market direct access to either properties or notes. And it's such a huge thing when everybody else is doing something from a marketing perspective. And it's so it's like a swimming pool in the summertime. Everybody's in there. And it's like you want to go to that private pool where there's maybe like 1 or 2 other individuals in there, and it's pretty much your pool. That's the way I look at it when you're working with these individuals directly. It's such a huge opportunity to get direct in there. And with your software, you're like, let's talk about some examples with your software. Like, if I'm in Indiana, I'm wanting to find some local mom and pop banks, what would be my best, how would I be able to find them using Distressed Pro, which you're the founder of?
Sure. Yeah. So, you can do this on your own, right? Distressed Pro and Bank Prospector makes this much, much easier. But this is publicly reported data. So banks have to report each quarter. They have to report all of their non-performing notes and REO, and they put all the things into different buckets, and then it's all public. The difference is it's kind of hard to get at. It's unwieldy. It comes in like these big packages of data, CSVs and whatnot. And so what we do with Bank Prospector is we tie directly into government servers, which are the FFIEC servers. And we do that through our servers. And then every night we pull all of the non-performing note and REO data out of there. We pull it into Bank Prospector, and then we make it all searchable and sortable. And so then in addition to that, what we do is we have a full-time team and technology background of an app that's behind that isn't public, where all we do with that is put contacts into it. So it's a full contact research team and web application where we're just firing contacts in there all the time.
Yep.
So the reason we do that, right, is that there's really, if you want to do this, if you want to work with banks, there's a 3-step process that you have to do. First one is you want to identify the lenders that you need to be reaching out to, because it's going to take a little bit of work. This isn't like a free gimme, you're going to have to make some calls and send some emails and get on LinkedIn. Right. And so what we want to do is we want to show you, like, if there's 400 banks in your area, and there probably are, which are the 50 or the 100 that you should be talking to? That's right. A step one, because we're not going to make a list of 400. You'll never do it. It's too many people. Then if I've got this list of 50 or 100 banks, and these are my best opportunities, who are the people that work there? Because that's what we want to do, is we want to reach out and we want to connect directly with these people, right? And then the third thing is we want to get them into a prospecting process, because what I find is that a lot of folks who get excited about this, they run in there and they'll make a call and they'll send an email, and then they sweat for a while and wonder, so are they going to call me back? I don't know, There's no way to do it, right? If you're going to do this, then what we want to do is we want to say, okay, here's 50 or 100 banks. Here's a couple of contacts for each one of those. This week, I'm going to email 50 of them. Next week, I'm going to email 50 more of them. And the next week, I'm going to email 50 more. And now I've started to cover my bases. Now I can start to see, are they opening and reading my emails? Are they replying to me? What are, am I saying the right things? That's the right way to approach this. And so what Bank Prospector does is it makes all that seamless for you. So you want to go in and generate a list of your best prospects. You go into our advanced search, you say, show me all the banks in Indiana that have residential REO. Show me all the ones who have taken, there's a number of indicators I can talk to you about, but we'll give you some resources at the end. Show me the ones who have been selling. Okay, boom, there's my list of 50 or 100. Okay, I go visit the bank records, grab a couple of contacts from there, they email their phone number, put them into my system and go. That's the idea, is that rather, we want to eliminate all of the research, all the hemming and hawing, all of the wondering what to do, and just let you get in there and point and click and go with it.
I have a question, not to interrupt you, man, but this is a question that always comes up. And the main reason why I wanted to interrupt you is because you just had something that came up, and folks ask us this when we're doing our talks, if we're doing seminars, or if we're talking to folks and we're teaching the method on how to get direct using LinkedIn. My question to you is, and I always get to answer this to folks, so I'd love to hear what your response is on this too. Why would the banks sell off the REOs to us rather than list them with an agent?
There's a million reasons. And it depends, each situation is different, right? Sometimes they don't want to sell because sometimes they need the money right now, right? Sometimes they're looking to recapitalize. They're looking to get what's called recovery. The way it works is they've got the paper. Now we're going to end up talking bank data. So they'll have the debt on the property. Somebody stops paying. They have to start writing down this debt. So they're saying, okay, it's worth I've got $100,000 mortgage. They're not paying. Now they're not paying 30, 60, 90 days. Now we're further out there. Well, do I have 100,000 anymore? That's what they have to ask themselves. And they have to start writing this down. Yep. And so now they've written it down to 90, to 80, to 75, right? And so when they're doing that, it's called taking charge offs. If they get to a point, okay, where it would behoove them to get that money back in sooner and faster. And so if you're going to go list with somebody, you're going to pay 6% anyway, exactly. Right? On that. You're going to have market time. It might be 45 days, might be 90, might be 180 days, depending on, what market you're in. If you're working with an investor, especially if you're working with somebody who is, whom you know, and that's the thing, is you want to get in there so that they get to know you. Because if you do one deal with them where you come in and you save their hide, because they've got the end of a quarter coming up, and they're going to go into meetings and they have to explain the assets that they have and why they still have them. If they'd rather not explain that, why they still have this thing on their books that's supposed to be gone, and you're the one who helped make it be gone, they're going to call you again when there's another opportunity. So sure. They sell for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes they don't want their name out there on a thing. Sometimes if they're selling the paper, they don't want to get in the chain of title. Sometimes they need to get recovery on stuff sooner rather than later. So there's a bunch of reasons. And I think one of the jobs, if you're gonna do this, is to get in there and understand why they're doing it, right? So one of the things that we like to teach is about how to talk to them. And so when you're calling up, we want to explore, like, why are you even talking to me? Why are you considering selling this? Why would, how have you done this before? And just understand that it's their job to sell, right? That's what these people are there for.
Yeah, it's not their job to hold on to assets, and that's not why they get into it. Their main purpose, correct me if I'm wrong, is to lend money and collect off of the interest.
That's right. Yeah, and in fact, once they foreclose, a clock starts ticking. So they've got 5 years to get rid of that asset, right? And as they stack up more non-performing and non-accrual assets on their books, there's a thing called risk weighting that comes into play. And if they have, the more bad assets that they have, the more money they have to set aside into this special bucket, like a rainy day bucket. And any of the money that's in that rainy day bucket, they cannot lend. So if they can't lend it, they can't make any money with it. So as their non-performing assets pile up, it reduces their ability to earn. So you coming in and helping them get non-performing assets out of there, of which REO is one of them, then that allows them to then free up that money so they can go lend to make more money.
That makes sense. It makes total sense. And for folks that are listening to this right now, you could get discounts from the bank by working with them directly. By the time it gets to a real estate agent and it gets listed, you've really kind of missed the boat, in my opinion. You need to form those relationships, because let's face it, any business that you're in, either be real estate or whatever it is, it's all relationships. It's all on building and really nurturing those relationships. And I like how you have for Bank Prospector. It is, you're prospecting, and once you find somebody, it's all about building from there with that individual. So
yeah.
With your software and all the data that it provides, would you say it's giving folks essentially a leg up on who's selling assets in their area? Yeah,
it's you can do this manually. It's a lot of work, right? Yeah. You can. There's a lot of, like, unless you're like a big fan of digging through Excel and all that, and that's what I did when I first started. I would download these things once a quarter. Now we get them every night. I would download these things once a quarter, and I'd open up spreadsheets and Excel spreadsheets, and try and figure out who took a huge amount of time. And so what we really wanted to do was eliminate that, and we have. So we have, advanced, for example, you'll go into our advanced search and you'll pick your states, you'll put in a couple of criteria, which we'll teach you about. And then it just runs. And when new lenders meet the criteria, you'll know about it, and you'll have contacts so you can reach out to there. As lenders fall out of there, they'll come off your list. And so we just wanted to make it dead simple, so that the only thing so that you're doing the relationship part, you're doing the calling part, you're doing the reaching out part, you're not doing the research and analysis part. Right. Even just going and finding who to contact. This is another pitfall I find. So people want to get started in this, and they'll decide they're going to pick a couple of banks. So they pick a couple of banks, and they're like, oh, it's prospecting time. Well, and they'll sit down, and then they'll do a little bit of research. They'll find a name. Maybe they'll send an email. And then they'll go back to research. And now I'm going to go find another person. I'm going to think about it for a little while. And if you really want to do this well, the thing to do is just stack them up. You line them up and you knock them down. That's it. Like today I'm going to make 10 calls. Here are the 10 people I'm going to call. I'm not going to sit around, mess with research and all this other stuff. I'm going to do the things that actually bring the money in, which is talking to the people, who have the deals. I know we're way over time.
No, and you bring up a really good point, and we'll be wrapping up here in just a second, but so many people get way, way too analytical with things, and it leads to inaction. So I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things, and one of the main reasons why I reached out to you back in 2012 was because you were able to simplify a process that was taking me hours on end. And I was able to get direct to the source within like seconds. So I was able to shrink the hours that I was spending just to get a hold of one person in seconds. Because the main thing, Brett, when we are getting into whatever business that we're wanting to start as CEOs, we're wanting what? Time. We want our time back. We want to be able to create so we could spend time with our families, go on vacations. And you were one of the things that I really love about the software is you get the time back. So I really, really enjoy that about your softwares that you have. So at this part of the podcast, we always like to ask this question to our experts that join us. And if you're doing something awesome right now, we want to know about it do you have like any books, like entrepreneur, self-help books, business books, anything that you would recommend? Maybe it's an Audible, because I'm a big Audible guy. I can't sit down too long. So I got to do an Audible. So do you have anything that you've been reading lately, or anything that's like just been, crazy, that's helped you out immensely to get you to where you are today?
Yeah. Well, to get me to where I am today has been a whole collection of things. I don't think that I can point to one thing. I can tell you a couple of things that I think are important right now and that I like, and that have been really helpful. And so if we're talking about books, I think the one thing, I don't know if you've had other people mention that on here, but the one thing is it's really good. It really, points to, I think we've got so much coming at us these days, between everything that's happening online and like just a flood of media all the time and all that.
Right.
Easy to and the opportunities just coming up like crazy. So what's the one thing? And that's what that book's about. And I highly recommend that. The other book that I'm making my way through right now, it's a tome, like it's a big ass book. But Ray Dalio's Principles. Ray, he's the founder of Bridgewater, which is the largest hedge fund in the world.
Okay.
And Principles is he went and he documented all of the things that they have in place, both in his business and personally, that he believes have helped him to succeed. And so that is something. It's not like a kind of a once through and you're done. Like it's like a manual for life or whatever.
Nice.
And then, is that enough things, I guess?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. That's great. Those two are really good. I haven't gotten into Ray's book yet, but I really do want to get into it. It's a decent sized book, but I'll be hopping into that one too. So two things here, and then we'll wrap it up. So is there a way for people to get in contact with you? You've got some amazing resources, free stuff that we talked about before we got online here. Do you have a way for somebody to get a hold of you, and also any parting words from you?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn's the best way to do it. I have if you think that this maybe might sound good, but you're not sure how you want to do that, or if you want to get started or whatever, we have a free course. It's just a 6-video free training where we walk you through step by step, kind of what the DIY looks like. And I think you're going to have a link for that we can put in here.
Yeah, we have noflippingexcuses.com/DP for Distressed Pro.
Yeah, and that'll take you right to our mini course. It's totally free. There's no obligation. You won't get spammed or anything like that. And then find me on LinkedIn. And that's it's just LinkedIn/in/Brecht, BRECHT. That's how early I was on LinkedIn. So I've got just Brecht. So the parting words would be that the real estate market's always changing, and it's never a straight line up. It never has been. It never will be. And the people who I know who have made the most money in real estate, like very big money, has all been in times of trouble. So if we are heading into a declining market, seems pretty clear that we are. I wouldn't take that as an opportunity to panic. I would take that as an opportunity to like recalculate and readjust and figure out how you're going to ride this wave, because where you make the money is on the buy side most of the time in this business. So think about how you're going to do that as we enter into this like new phase of the market.
No, that's awesome, man. Thank you. Thank you for that. And let me go ahead and let folks know, if you need anything whatsoever from us, make sure you feel free to reach out to support@jasonluchesi.com. Again, that's support@JASONLUCCHESI. And make sure you leave us a 5-star review for this podcast. Brett dropped some really, really great knowledge bombs that will for sure help you and your business. So make sure you do that. 5-star reviews would really, really appreciate you. And we'll be having episodes come out every single week. Brett, I'd like to thank you for being on the show with us. It's been awesome reconnecting with you, my friend. You're doing some amazing things out there. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, man. Good time.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. You take care. Thanks for joining us today. You guys go flip a house, and we'll talk to you later. Take care.